Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we are going to be talking about an announcement that Kevin Smith made yesterday on Twitter, which is that he is currently in the scripting phases for both Mallrats 2, which is being titled Twilight of the Mallrats, and Clerks 3. Now, the thing is that both of these films have kind of been in the pipeline for a number of years now. I think Clerks 3 was announced 2 years ago, maybe. And Mallrats 2 was announced, I think, maybe even longer than that. Because Kevin Smith was originally doing it for a friend of his who had worked on the original Mallrats who had passed away. But this is interesting as Kevin Smith kind of gives his year in review for 2019. He says it was great. He says that the renewed interest in Jay and Silent Bob because of Jay and Silent Bob Reboot has kind of creatively gotten his juices flowing, which is why he wants to return to his Askewniverse, or his View Askewniverse, which is basically his little universe that includes all the Jay and Silent Bob tie-in films, Clerks, Clerks 2, Mallrats, Dogma, Chasing Amy, so on and so forth. So basically, it's going to be kind of interesting to see how certain things get pulled together in this, because again, Mallrats came out in 1995. And there were a lot of cameos in Mallrats, which is kind of funny. But Mallrats came out in '95, and it's basically just kind of the idea. If you haven't seen it, it's basically just kind of the idea of it's the day in and day out happenings of this little mall in New Jersey, or not little mall, but this mall in New Jersey. And obviously, it has your standard characters, your standard fare. You have Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes coming in as Jay and Silent Bob, and then a whole slew of other characters from the Kevin Smith regulars: Ben Affleck, Jason Lee, and there's a lot kind of going on in the movie, but it works and it's funny. And I believe if I remember correctly, that was Kevin Smith's second theatrically released film after Clerks. But here's the thing: is that Kevin Smith has kind of been he's coming back to what he did very well before. Now, the last Askewniverse film before Jay and Silent Bob Reboot was Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Or sorry, not Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, was Clerks 2. And that was way back in, I think, 2007, 2008, something like that. And the interesting thing here is that now everything's kind of been revitalized because he went off and he did a bunch of other movies that really didn't work out. He did movies like Tusk, which is a god-awful film, Yoga Hosers, which not a lot of people liked, Red State, which is really, really weird, and Cop Out, which I found to be kind of funny, but he also described as a living hell because of Bruce Willis. But it's interesting to kind of see this get pulled back together because now that Reboot has come out and it's appearing to be successful because Kevin Smith is premiering it almost like a cross-country comedy tour and making a buttload of money, he probably is going to wind up doing at least one of these two films, and he says he wants to do one of those two in 2020. And I'm not sure how far along the scripting phase is on Mallrats 2 or Clerks 3. Again, these things have been in development for a number of years now, so it's kind of hard to pace, how much they've been rewritten and how much the current draft is finished, or if it takes anything from the previous drafts, or if this is a revisionist thing. But it seems that there's renewed interest in Kevin Smith's films because of the success of Reboot. So this is probably one of these two. I think will probably happen. I don't necessarily know if they'll happen this year. It depends on if certain things come together. But I think you'll definitely see one of the two in 2021 if you don't see one this year. But I think Mallrats is the one that's probably going to get made first. Just because Mallrats 2 is one of those films, it's like, okay, it has a longer gap than between Clerks 2 and 3. I think he probably wants to get that one made before, and I think that one was actually in development before Clerks 3, so I would assume that one is further along from a writing and casting standpoint. Now, the only question is, you can get probably a lot of the Smith regulars to come back. The only one that's kind of up in the air is Ben Affleck, even though he did come back for Reboot, which I thought was kind of funny. But it's interesting to kind of see this resurgence for Kevin Smith, especially after he had his heart attack in 2018, and now 2019, he's been having a very good year. So I like Kevin Smith. I think Kevin Smith is kind of he's the everyman of Hollywood, if you want to put it that way. He's one of those people that, like, he just started out making movies. He doesn't know a whole lot about a whole lot of things. He just knows how to kind of write somewhat funny dialogue in his own way. And he's not a person who's full of himself like a lot of Hollywood people. He's extremely humble when he considers, where he came from and what he's doing. That, he barely even considers himself a director in some cases when you watch him. And it's funny kind of hearing stories about, basically, he's a director that almost learned on the fly, because after Clerks, he didn't really know what he was doing. He just made a movie called Clerks and it took off. And then after that, he just kind of started doing stuff, and he didn't really know a whole. He didn't go to film school. He doesn't know a whole lot about cameras. There's actually a funny story about from with the set of Cop Out, where apparently the reason why Bruce Willis was so hard to work with him was because Bruce Willis was asking him what kind of camera they were going to be using for the scene, and Kevin Smith immediately deferred to his cinematographer, who works with him on most of his movies. And the cinematographer told Bruce Willis, and Bruce Willis kind of got pissed because, like, Kevin Smith's the director. He should know what kind of camera you're using. You shouldn't just defer to the cinematographer. That's lazy. So he kind of thought of Kevin Smith as a hack and treated him as such. But here's the thing, is that, like, when it comes to Kevin Smith movies, he's hit or miss. He had a lot of hits early in his career with the idea that, like, he developed a solid fan base, and that fan base has stayed with him over the years because he hasn't treated them like dirt, unlike some other Hollywood franchises and directors have been doing. But, that's really what's kept him alive, is those people that started following him back in the 90s when he was coming out with the majority of these films. And the actors that have worked with him over the years that like him, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, they like him. Jason Lee. I haven't seen Linda Florentino in one of his movies in a while, but Rosario Dawson, who came back for Reboot. Jason Long, who came to him later on. Obviously, Jason Mewes. A lot of people that just sort of gravitated towards him, but they stuck around because they liked him as a person. And that's the other thing, is Kevin Smith has always been very open about these things. He's never, it's not like he's never been totally secretive about what he's doing in terms of his films. He'll announce this stuff well beforehand, and then, maybe 5 years later we'll see it come out. It's kind of like Guillermo del Toro in a way, in the sense that, he'll announce like a million films, but he'll come out with like 3. But, Kevin Smith is a lot more reserved than that. But it's nice to see kind of the return of his career, and it's nice to see that Mallrats 2 is getting made, because I do really like that movie, and I think Kevin Smith, given his kind of return to that kind of idea, I think that he can do it very well, and I think that if it was anybody else, if it was somebody saying I'm doing this on behalf of Kevin Smith or something like that, or if this was coming out after, God forbid something happened to him, then I would be very concerned with it, because I don't think anybody could do it like Kevin Smith, because those are his characters and that's his world. But because he's doing it, I would say I'm excited for Mallrats 2, and I want to see where it goes. I am a little bit concerned because they are getting, obviously Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes are getting older now, but at the same time, they're not to the point where they're geriatric. Again, it's not like Indiana Jones 5, where you have Harrison Ford in a wheelchair running away from Russians or Nazis or whatever the hell happens to be in the universe at that point. But only time will tell based on what this is going to be. But essentially, the idea for Twilight of the Mallrats is, at least what's throwing around, is this kind of a swan song to Mallrats as a film series, I guess, even though there would only be 2 of them. Is the idea that, this is the twilight years of the mall kind of thing, or this is the end of that. And then obviously you'd have Clerks 3, which would come out after that, which would have, Randall and Dante coming back. But I want to know what you think. Put in the comments below. Are you a fan of Kevin Smith? Do you like his movies? Would you be excited to see Mallrats 2 or Clerks 3? And are you excited for any of his other stuff? And have you seen Reboot? Put any of your thoughts in the comments below. Again, I like to read them. Hit the bell for notifications. Hit the like button. Subscribe. And remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?